Hello, dear friends. There's a lot of change going on in the world right now, even though when we look around, things don't appear to be that different. But in actuality, we are going through, we have entered a very accelerated transitional period between states of consciousness. When we look at the world, we see everybody is actually feeling this. And a lot of the manifestations that we see in the world right now are actually reactions to this feeling of transition, of change. And people don't understand how what this change is or how deep it goes. They feel it on some level, but they don't understand what's really happening. And so they react in a way that is usually fear driven. They react by trying to cling to the old order of things because that makes them feel secure, and the sense of change and upheaval makes them feel insecure. So even on the national level, we see this being played out right now. We see um, we see the leaders of countries uh, trying to impose the uh, the same kind of political order and uh, military might that has been operational throughout this age and has in some people's minds it been workable, um, but that's stretching the matter really. It hasn't been workable. We've survived it, but it hasn't given us the fullness of life. So this accelerated transitional period that we've entered is it has begun, and there are other indications of this beside the reactionary behavior of so many people. One of the indications is technology, and our technology has and our science has basically gone out ahead of us. There have been some people, a few, that have understood the implications of technological advances and scientific breakthroughs that are beginning to become mainstream. They have understood that these changes are indicative of a completely new um, uh, order for mankind. That things will not be the same after this transitional period settles down. The entire uh, basis of human life is changing. This is I've talked in some of my other videos about this, and because it's really the most monumental thing going on in the world right now. Uh, I know that the political leaders say that this or that is the most important thing going on, but really, what's going on the political scene is just more of the status quo. The really monumental change is going on within human society behind the scenes with, like I said, people don't know what it is or what's really changing, and they don't know the source of the change. And the source of the change is the evolution of human consciousness. Human consciousness has been awakened, it has been on for 6,000 years. And the evolution of consciousness has been going on very slowly and very much behind the scenes of, again, most people don't even know that we have consciousness, and most people don't know that it's evolutionary, and most people can't really feel that aspect of life as being uh, the greatest impetus in the human scene, but it is, and it always has been. But for the past 6,000 years, we have been conscious beings in the state of consciousness that we are very familiar with. It, I call it Adamic consciousness. It's a state in which the Bible describes it in the very beginning of its pages, succinctly, but very good, very well. It just says that in this state of consciousness, mankind feels a sense of separation that impacts every aspect of life. In other words, this sense of separation isn't something that we just feel sometimes, or that uh, we only are aware of it at certain times. No, it's actually something so major that it impacts our whole orientation to life. That's where our orientation of individual human strength, initiative comes from. All of us have this, and all of us are living as if our own strength can be the force that gets us what we want in life. So that's our orientation to life, is one of human strength. And even in the faith communities, they talk about allowing a higher power to guide them and to influence them. But in truth, when it comes down to it, this state of consciousness that we've been in is it's so set in our psyche, it's so ingrained that we automatically revert to our human strength orientation. It happens instinctively. And the other aspect of this state of consciousness, which I've talked about many times, is the knowledge of good and evil, or the perspective of dualities. And again, this is so deeply ingrained in us that it has become instinctual. We see life through the lens of dualities. We see good and evil. We see, and there's a very sharp divide between them. We see evil. In fact, it's through our state of consciousness that evil came into being. There was no evil in our world prior to our awakening of consciousness in Adam, because there was no uh, perspective of that it existed. And now, with this knowledge of good and evil, we not only have given evil uh, a, a manifestation, a body, a voice, a presence in our world, we have throughout this age been very much interacting with evil. We've seen it, we've beheld it, and we've embraced it often, all of us. And and so this is also something that's very uh, characteristic of Adamic consciousness. Now, throughout this age, there has been the evolution of consciousness going on, but it's been very slow and it's been very restrained by us. We have, with our Adamic consciousness, we have had free choice about this, that we can feel that mankind is evolutionary on some level, but we can also control the dial and we can turn it way down. And that's what we've done throughout this age. And the reason for this is pretty simple. It's simply that many human beings have become attached to our present state of consciousness and our present world order, and they don't want it to change. That's just basic logic. And so throughout this age, we've had a large segment of society holding on to the status quo and implementing programs that ensure that the status quo uh, holds steady. So the evolution of consciousness has been going on, but in a very restrained manner. But we understand that it's been going on because we see it in many fields of human endeavor. We see it in our scientific community. Throughout this age, our science has been developing and it has been growing and it has been tending toward greater and greater light. The same holds true in the realm of invention and even in the realm of practical lifestyle enhancement. That has been going on throughout this age, so that mankind's lifestyle is it's definitely improved over the age from what it was in the beginning. And we also see it in the arts, the creative arts of mankind, the literature and the music and the visual arts. And there's just been many expressions of evolved consciousness on an individual level. But throughout this age, even though it's clear that mankind has been moving forward slowly, things basically have not changed. We still operate according to the same instinctual patterns that we did in the beginning, and we still have basically the same societal order and structure. Um, but all of this is about to change. And that's what we are going through right now. The transition period is it's going to be very major, these changes, because it's not going to just involve uh, our scientific communities or art communities. It's going to involve all of us, and it's going to affect all of us, and it's going to uh, change human life from the inside out completely. And that's what we're all feeling. And it is truly a monumental shift. So if we're feeling insecure, it's perfectly understandable, although it's not necessary, because the change that we're going through and the evolvement that we're embarking upon is going to bring a much greater um, blessing to human life than we've ever understood before. So, in some of my other talks, I've described uh, how some of these changes are going to look. This is an evolution of human consciousness. And we have to understand that human society has been built by and made to reflect the Adamic state of consciousness. So many things are going to come down that have been carried over the last 6,000 years. Socially, we have been very set in our social patterns for 6,000 years, and that has to do with Adamic consciousness. We have um, had the same social inclinations as a species for this time. We have gravitated toward family life and toward having our own nuclear family with for the sake of raising children. Um, and this social order has been marred on a very obvious level. And even though it's all we've known, and so we don't think that it's necessarily needs to be changed, but this social order has been marred because uh, as indicative of Adamic consciousness, it has been hurtful for many, many people. It has been exclusionary. It has been possessive. That's where jealousy comes from. Is jealousy is only something that is it exists only because of Adamic consciousness. It's the sense that we possess people. We possess our friends. We call them my friends. We possess our biological mate, our husband or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend. We call them my wife, my husband. We possess our children, my son, my daughter. And we this possession makes us jealous. It makes us feel threatened that any other force in life can come in and take ours away from us. And that's been our social mentality for the past 6,000 years. And so I've talked about how this is going to change because in the new consciousness that is ahead of us, in Christ consciousness, there is no place for possession of people. There's no place for exclusion of people. There's no place for drawing lines of hatred and bigotry. This has only been part of Adamic consciousness. And Jesus showed us, as the example of the Christ, that it will not be carried into the new age. Um, it's it's we're going to change, and our whole social structure is going to change. I don't know exactly how that's going to manifest, but I know that possession will end, and I know that exclusion will end. It might mean the end of the nuclear family as we have known it up until now. But there is another aspect that is in for a major transformation in our society. And I haven't talked too much about this. And this new look for human society involves our spiritual inclination. Human consciousness is spiritual. That's what spirituality is. It's the fact that we have human consciousness that makes us spiritual. We have within us an endowment of consciousness that is unique to our species. We feel spiritual life. We feel conscious life. And we, throughout this age of Adam, have had the inclination to express this because it's a very strong part of who we are. And we have gravitated toward what could be called a religious format of expression for our spiritual inclination. And that has to do very much with our Adamic state of consciousness, because when you look at our religions, they're very much like our social situation, our social order. When you look at our religions, they too are exclusionary. They too are have a dark side. They too are hurtful to many people. And now, looking back on 6,000 years of religious expression, it's almost, well, I won't say comical because it's also painful, but to see that our religions have been very archaic and very bestial in many ways. They have caused men and women to not only hurt others, but to kill, to coerce, and this is also destined to disappear with the New Age. That's why Jesus was not a religious man. He was not associated with any religion, and he didn't practice. He didn't hold to the doctrines of any religion. When you look back on this age of religion, you see the archaic mentality. When you see that every religion has viewed God as a personal God that is really just an anthropomorphic extension of ourselves, but more like a Superman, a God that gets angry, and a God that gets jealous, and a God that is hateful to some people, and a God that is sometimes loving. And this is a very archaic frame of mind. And not to mention that many, many of the other doctrines from all religions are archaic. They are superstitious, and they are fearful, fear-driven doctrines of heaven and hell and damnation, and the list goes on and on, my friends. And all we have to do is stand back and see, just take a look at where we've been, and to see that we're changing for the better. We're going forward into much greater light. And this kind of archaic, dark mentality is destined to pass away. And so, along with our social order changing, we see that in the new age, there is probably going to be no religion. But there is definitely going to be human consciousness, because that's who we are, and that's what we're evolving into, is a greater expression of spirituality, a greater expression of consciousness, a higher consciousness. And so there's definitely going to be spirituality, but religion will pass away. And this was what Jesus showed us, was that mankind can become a very good version of ourselves through this approach, a more streamlined spiritual approach, where we feel our consciousness, we feel our spiritual inclination, but we do not box it in institutionally into some kind of dark doctrinal format. And so, how is this going to express itself? We basically, we know that the evolution of consciousness happens not because of religious faith, but because of science. That much even our scientists understand. Our scientists understand evolution very well. They understand that creatures that are upon the earth, many of them evolve in different ways, and mankind is also an evolving creature, but it's in the realm of consciousness. So the evolution of consciousness will basically become the new religion of man. And this means that there will be no doctrinal. The evolution of consciousness is a completely streamlined spiritual event or activity. It has no doctrines, no creeds, no liturgy, and most wonderfully, no hostility toward other people, toward other religions. It's inclusive of all peoples, and everybody who has consciousness, and we all do, is part of the evolution of consciousness, part of this new faith or new religion of mankind. And that's where we're heading. The evolution of consciousness is going to completely satisfy this inclination that we have. And it's going to build a new world for us. We, up until now, have been we have been building our world through consciousness, but you can see that because our consciousness, our state of consciousness, has been dark and unenlightened, you can see that the world that we have built is also dark and is also troubled, and we don't want that anymore. We want light, and we want goodness for all mankind. So then the question becomes, how do we move into this new religion of man? How, first of all, one thing that we can do is to take a good look at our old religions and see their archaic nature, their superstitious nature, their um, everything that is retrogressive about them. And so that can be sort of a way that we can prepare our hearts. There is a letting go that we need to do of our old um, ideas about God and about us, who, how we're made, and about our our world. We have to. There's a lot of letting go that we have to do, and uh, and this is just something that we all can do by being real, by taking a really good look. We don't need to be taught this. We don't need to be shown. We just need to look at it honestly for ourselves. The other thing, well, there are actually two other things that we can work on, and these both of these are revealed to us by Jesus, and um, uh, Jesus gave them to us for the purpose of coming into the new age of the new consciousness, and therefore they're very highly effectual. Um, there are ways when we're ready as individuals that we can actually undermine the Adamic state of consciousness. This is not as difficult as it sounds. We've been in this state of consciousness for a very long time. It's very ingrained in our species DNA, but all it takes to undermine it is to reverse a couple of the key characteristics. And one of those characteristics is the sense of separation, as I spoke of earlier. And the other has to do with the perspective of good and evil. Good and evil is not going, that perspective is not going to disappear. The perspective itself is going to be carried forward into the new age. There's nothing wrong with the perspective of good and evil. It's a very, knowledge is good. Knowledge of all things is good. So there's nothing wrong with the knowledge of good and evil. And in fact, in the Bible, it says that God looked upon Adam when he had first awoken to this endowment, this knowledge of good and evil, and said, he's now become like us, like God. So the knowledge of good and evil is not going anywhere, but the way we relate to good and evil is going to change. And this was something that Jesus also gave us an empowering tool about how to approach. So first, let me speak of the sense of separation. This is a strong foundational underpinning of the Adamic state. And as I said, it causes many behaviors to flow forth, like our entire orientation to life through human strength. So to undermine Adamic consciousness, it's very important that we have the tool to do away with the sense of separation. The sense of separation is instinctual. It's within us now. It's within our DNA, but it's just a belief. It's a very deeply ingrained belief. And when Adam awoke to his state of consciousness, there it was. And he acted on it. And since he acted on it, mankind has never stopped acting on it and reacting to it. We've never stopped to look at what it is. and whether it's real, and whether it's really something. We've been so busy reacting, we've been so busy with our orientation of human strength and never letting down from that, that we haven't understood that this is very easy to change. Actually, it's like on your computer making a certain kind of change or adjustment. You just have to know where to click. Jesus died on the cross as an atoning sacrifice for sin, for um, because it's the message of that is that it's sin that makes us feel separate from God, from life. It's our own sense of sin. And so Jesus died as an atoning sacrifice, purposefully. This wasn't something that happened accidentally. It was something that he knew as a tool, as a power to give us, to help us undermine Adamic consciousness. And when we undermine Adamic consciousness, we naturally move forward into Christ consciousness. Jesus saw this need for us, and that's why he died. And that's why he taught his disciples to go forth into the world and proclaim a message of reconciliation. This is undermining stuff. The message of reconciliation with God is directly opposite to the sense of separation. If we actually believe that we have been reconciled to God, our sense of separation will vanish. And that will have a tremendous undermining effect on Adamic consciousness. But we have to understand that the religious doctrine about Jesus' death does not apply. The religious doctrine is that he died for our sins, he took the sins of the world upon him, and he bore them away and so forth. But all Jesus did was he made a very believable case for reconciliation. And he, in fact, there had been, before Jesus came on the scene, there had been other forms of atonement in our religious communities and in other forms of society too. Atonement was not a new idea with him, but he saw that the essence of atonement's power was faith. It was to be able to believe it. In other words, the message of reconciliation through the atonement, when we take it into our consciousness and believe it, that is its power, not some God-directed power that comes from heaven. And no, it was a power of very basic kind of psychological tool for us. So Jesus made his death, his sacrificial death, as believable as he could. That was as dramatic as he could and as believable. That was his intent, because he knew that the power was in our faith. It was in the believability that consciousness, once we took this idea into consciousness with full faith, our sense of separation would be gone. And so the other forms of atonement that came before Jesus became obsolete because they weren't as believable. The sacrifice of animals and the blood of an animal taking away your sin, and the Day of Atonement, and these other doctrines weren't as believable. Jesus's doctrine, Jesus's sacrifice was much more believable. It was meant to be all inclusive, not just for one people. It was meant to be forever, not just for today and then sin again tomorrow. And it was meant to be very dramatic for a reason. The imagery of Jesus's death is very important because it makes it that much more believable. We all know the story that he was not worthy of death, that he was a very good man and very pure. He was the Christ in the sense that he was already moving in Christ consciousness. So to have that kind of a man be sacrificed for us was extremely dramatic, extremely powerful, and very believable. So the power comes from our being able to believe this message, and that reverses the sense of separation that has been with all of us throughout this age. And you don't need religion, and you don't really need any teaching about this. You need to believe it. You need to embrace it as a possibility, take it into consciousness, and work with it. And in the same way that the sense of separation is a belief, this belief will banish that belief. And the other thing that Jesus did that was very powerful for us and very helpful for us to undermine Adamic consciousness involved good and evil. Because Jesus knew that good and evil was not going anywhere, it wasn't, we, as a species, we weren't going, our direction was not to go back before Adam awoke to consciousness, before there was good and evil. Our direction is to go forward into a new consciousness that includes good and evil as knowledge, but is a state in which we have power. We have the ability to say no to evil. That is the difference between Jesus and the Christ and any Adamic man or woman. When we're in Adam, we don't have that power. We see evil and we very readily feel inclined to embrace evil. And the reason that we do this is very complicated. It has to do with all of these other aspects of Adamic consciousness, such as our sense of separation and our sense of being having to live by our own strength, our sense of desperation that often comes from trying to make our own way, and our sin, our embracing of sin. All of this makes us very powerless in regards to evil. And that's why in the age of Adam, evil has been a terrible adversary of mankind. We've even built a whole mythology about it and made it into a personalized demonic being. And that's not what it is. It's all evil is our own state of consciousness presenting us with an alternative to good, presenting us with the flip side uh, of good. But Jesus, the Christ, had power over evil. He saw evil, but as he said, I have overcome the world. And he had overcome this aspect of Adamic life. He was not like us. He was not tempted any longer by evil. He had faced it, and he had the strength to say no. And when he did that, something really major happened uh, in the uh, in the universe. Um, the power of evil became took its rightful place. The power of evil is really nothing compared to the creative power of consciousness, of God. The power of evil is the power of temptation and the power of causing us to embrace it, convincing us to embrace evil as a method for getting what we think we need. And when you take the power of evil away by saying no to it, you don't make it disappear. You simply make it inactive. You make it powerless. You make it. You just take all of the life out of it. And that was what Jesus had done. And that's what made him the Christ, along with his curing of the sense of separation. To be able to say no to evil is not something that God can do for us. This is what Jesus taught, was that we each have to do this. But what Jesus gave us was the example, was the inspiration, and was the clear knowledge that we are capable of this. Jesus taught about our potential as conscious human beings, and that we are all capable, we are all more powerful than evil. And all we have to do is search within our own hearts and say to ourselves, come to a place of logical reasoning within ourselves. Do we like evil? Do we really want to embrace evil? Or do we want to say no to it? And if we want to say no, we have to find that strength within us. And again, it has to do with faith, because if we are going to say no to evil, we have to believe that our needs will be met without it. And we can do this, but it takes faith, because we've all been trained to believe that when push comes to shove, we might need to call on evil and sin to help us make our way. But Jesus showed us never go that way. Instead, have faith, have trust in God, have trust in consciousness, have trust in who you are and how God made you to be, and believe that you never need to embrace evil. You can always say no to it. And once you gain that realization, it's done. You've done it, and you're finished. You're not going to embrace evil again, because you remember that you've overcome the world with Jesus. And so these, my friends, are the power, the tools that Jesus gave us and that we have to undermine Adamic consciousness. And when we employ these tools, we will move forward in the evolution of consciousness automatically. There's nothing we need to do about that at that point. We will move forward into the Christ, and this has already begun. And that's why we're going through so many changes right now. Many people are doing this already, and some of them are doing it on their own without Jesus's help, and some of them are doing it purely by instinct. But many are doing it. And that's why the world is in such great upheaval right now, because, and that's why we've entered this time of great transition from one age to another. And it's happening, and things are going to really be different once all the dust settles. But we have to understand and believe and know that the evolution of consciousness is not our enemy. It's our great power and friend, and it's our great light, and it's going to produce human life that is so much elevated, so much more elevated than what we've known it to be up until now. It's not something to fear. And of course, we're in the middle of a transition period that does seem very fearful, but we'll go through it and we'll come out the other end. And we will not be Adamic anymore at that point, and our world will quickly come to reflect these changes.